Hi, everyone. Welcome to Criminal Case Today. In today's video, we'll explore a case that shocked the world, the disappearance of Brittany Drexel. In April 2009, Brittany disappeared while on a trip with friends, and the search for answers lasted more than a decade. Get ready to dive into the details of this captivating mystery and discover the recent revelations that changed everything. Stay with us and together we'll unravel what really happened to Brittany Drexel. Let's go. In April 2009. Brittany Drexel was 17 years old, an age where emotions seem to be more intense, where decisions are made with the heart and, often, without considering the consequences. Brittany was a girl who, in the eyes of others, seemed to have everything under control. She was beautiful, athletic, with a promising future as a cosmetologist, and even dreamed of being a model. But behind that confident smile was a teenager struggling to find her place in a world that suddenly seemed very complicated. Brittany's life took a turn in 2008 when her parents, Dawn and Chad, separated. Chad wasn't her biological father, but he had raised her as if he were, and the separation left a deep scar. Brittany adored Chad, and seeing him leave home was a hard blow. She was in that delicate stage of adolescence where everything seems more intense, and the loss of the stepfather she loved so much was hard to bear. Things at home became tense, and Brittany began to distance herself from her mother, Dawn. Her grades at school slipped, and she began to feel lost. Despite the hardships, Brittany tried to maintain the facade of a normal teenager. She liked fashion, always had her hair and makeup impeccable, and loved going out with her friends. But there was a growing dissatisfaction inside her, a feeling that she needed to escape, to find something more exciting, something that would make her feel alive again. And so, in April 2009, she made the decision that would change her life forever. Brittany was determined to take a trip with her friends to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It was a trip that promised fun, sun, and a break from all the problems she was facing at home. But there was one big problem: her mother didn't know, and if she had, she would never have allowed it. Dawn didn't know these friends, and more importantly, she didn't trust them. But Brittany, like many teenagers, thought she knew what was best for herself. So she lied. She told her mother she was going to a friend's house for a few days, needing space after a fight, when in reality she was getting ready to leave for Myrtle Beach. The trip started out as expected, with Brittany and her friends enjoying the sun and the beaches. But something was off. Brittany was in a fragile emotional state, and any little thing could spell disaster. And that's exactly what happened. Tensions between Brittany and her friends grew, and what was supposed to be a fun trip turned into a nightmare. Brittany's friends, Alana Lipa, Jennifer Ober, and Philip Ober, began to treat her coldly. They fought, were hostile, and at some point, it seems, tried to push her away. Brittany was alone, far from home, and felt like she couldn't trust anyone. To make matters worse, she was staying at a cheap, dingy hotel, the Bar Harbor, a place that would soon be closed. The hotel itself seemed to reflect how Brittany felt: isolated, scared, and vulnerable. Meanwhile, John Greco, Brittany's boyfriend who couldn't go on the trip because of work, was in constant contact with her via text message. He knew Brittany wasn't well, but he never realized how serious the situation was. The day Brittany disappeared, John lost contact with her and immediately became concerned. Something was wrong. He tried desperately to get in touch, but got no response. In a panic, he called Brittany's mother. Dawn Drexel, upon hearing the news, was overcome with a sense of dread. She knew something was wrong. Brittany was not the type to disappear without a trace. Dawn tried to contact the friends who had been on the trip with Brittany, but they were cold and evasive. None of them seemed to care. None of them made any effort to help. To Dawn, this was incomprehensible. How could these young men, who were supposedly friends of her daughter, be so callous? Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and Brittany remained missing. The police were involved, a statewide and eventually nationwide search was organized, but Brittany seemed to have disappeared without a trace. The media covered the case extensively, and everyone had their own theories about what might have happened. But with no concrete evidence, the case began to go cold. For Dawn, time has brought no relief, only more pain. In 2012, 3 years after Brittany's disappearance, she wrote a public letter expressing her despair and frustration: "None of those who were with my daughter on this trip have helped me in any way. None of them have ever contacted me with concern or offered any assistance, and none of their parents have ever reached out to comfort me in my grief. It's hard for me to understand how most human beings can lack compassion, even for a complete stranger. Brittany's mother, Dawn Drexel, began receiving these frightening calls from friends and family in New York. They said that the last people to see Brittany alive were posting on social media, making cruel and mean comments about her. These people weren't strangers, they were people Brittany considered friends, fellow travelers who should have been there for her, but instead were more concerned about their own vacation than Brittany's whereabouts. They complained, as if the tragedy were a minor inconvenience, something that had ruined what should have been a fun trip. Dawn, already consumed by grief and uncertainty, found her anguish turning to anger and despair. These friends were spreading lies, distorting the facts, and making the situation even worse. Not only did they not help find out what happened to Brittany, they also did everything they could to protect their own image, with little regard for the devastating pain they were causing the Drexel family. At a time when every bit of help was crucial, these people offered nothing, no clues, no support, only silence or, worse, lies that only added to the confusion and suffering. Brittany, like any teenager, made choices that may not have been the best. One of her biggest mistakes was trusting this group of friends. In the messages Brittany exchanged with her boyfriend, John Greco, you can see how badly she felt and how out of place she was. She was in a place that should have been fun, surrounded by people who should have cared about her, but in reality, she felt miserable and isolated. The messages reveal a young woman struggling to keep up appearances, trying to find some semblance of happiness amidst the chaos. These feelings of loneliness were fueled by her friends on the trip, who treated her poorly and didn't care about the impact their words and actions were having on Brittany. The cruelty of these girls was evident not only during the trip, but also after Brittany disappeared. When the girl went missing, there was no genuine concern from them. They didn't band together to look for Brittany, they didn't run to the police with information that could help. Instead, they did the bare minimum, perhaps just to avoid drawing suspicion to themselves. Meanwhile, Dawn was consumed with anxiety, desperately trying to find out where her daughter was. During the trip, Brittany met a young man named Peter Brozovic. He was 20 years old and a club promoter in Brittany's hometown of Rochester. Peter seemed like the kind of guy you'd meet at a party, fun, charismatic, someone who could make a night out more interesting. He took Brittany to a bunch of clubs, introduced her to his friends, and to Brittany, it probably seemed exciting, a chance to escape some of the tension she was feeling. But to Brittany's mother, Dawn, it was suspicious. When she found out that Brittany had met Peter at the beach, her mind raced with 1,000 theories. Could he be trusted? Could he have been involved in her daughter's disappearance? On April 24, 2009, Brittany and her friends went to the Kryptonite Club in Myrtle Beach. Kryptonite was a popular place, full of young people partying, with flashing lights, loud music, and a lively atmosphere. For Brittany, it was a chance to distract herself, to try to enjoy the trip, even if her friends weren't exactly being nice to her. The next night, April 25, Brittany decided to go to the Blue Water Resort, a much more upscale hotel than the one where she was staying. That was where Peter and his friends were staying, and Brittany went to meet them, perhaps looking for company or simply to get away from the hostile environment she was in. Security cameras at the Blue Water Resort captured images of Brittany arriving at the hotel around 8 p.m. She was dressed casually in a black and white tank top, flip-flops, and shorts, and carrying a beige purse. She looked like an ordinary young woman in an ordinary place, but this image would become one of the last images of Brittany alive. While there, she exchanged text messages with Jennifer O'Burr, one of the friends she was traveling with. They ended up arguing over a pair of shorts, a seemingly insignificant fight, but it would be Brittany's last known communication. No one imagined that this small argument would lead to one of the most harrowing mysteries of the decade. Brittany left the hotel in a rage, heading out into the night, unaware that she was walking into the unknown. And that was when Brittany's trail disappeared. As the investigation began, attention quickly turned to Peter Brozovic. Could he have had something to do with her disappearance? Peter was publicly confronted by Brittany's parents, who appeared on a TV show to demand answers. The charges against Peter were serious: kidnapping, drug trafficking, sex trafficking, a laundry list of horrific crimes. But as much suspicion hung over him, the evidence was thin. There was no clear timeline linking Peter to Brittany's disappearance, and he was never formally charged. The case took another turn in 2016, when a man named Timothy Taylor was named by a local newspaper as the prime suspect in Brittany's murder. Timothy had a checkered history and a past that linked him to criminal activity, but even then, the evidence against him was insufficient. The accusation was sensationalized. It was said that Timothy Taylor, a 26-year-old man, began to be whispered in shadowy circles as the possible killer of Brittany Drexel. According to an informant, Taylor not only kidnapped Brittany, but also brutally killed her and then dumped her body in a well infested with alligators. The story was terrifying, worthy of a nightmare that no one would want to live. It all started when a confidential informant, someone who knew the ins and outs of Taylor's illicit business, made a tip to the police. He claimed that Taylor was hiding in a remote place called McClellanville, about 90 kilometers from Myrtle Beach, where Brittany had disappeared. This informant told a terrifying story. He said he had seen Brittany, desperate and afraid, trying to escape from this dark hideout. But before she could escape, Taylor captured her again. The informant reported that Taylor, furious, hit Brittany with a pistol, taking her back inside the house, where he held her under his control. It was then that the sound of 2 gunshots rang out in the air, a sound that the informant believed to be Brittany's tragic end. Later, he witnessed something even more disturbing: a carefully wrapped body being removed from the house and thrown into one of the many alligator ponds in the area. These reptiles, known for their voracity, would become the guardians of a terrible secret. Another informant, independent of the first, corroborated this macabre story. He added that Taylor had kidnapped Brittany in Myrtle Beach and taken her to McClellanville, where he displayed her to his friends as if she were a dark trophy. This second informant also suggested that Taylor may have planned to sell Brittany for sex trafficking purposes. However, when the case began to receive media attention and became widely publicized, Taylor allegedly decided to kill her, believing that this was the only way to avoid capture. But here is where the versions diverge. While the first informant claimed that Taylor killed Brittany because she tried to escape, the second indicated that the murder was motivated by fear of being discovered. This inconsistency raised doubts about the veracity of the allegations, making it difficult for police to consider this information as concrete evidence. During this time, Brittany's stepfather, Chad Drexel, was consumed with grief and anger. He made inflammatory statements to the press, accusing Taylor of being responsible for his daughter's death. Chad did not mince words, harshly criticizing Taylor's family for standing by the young man, even in the face of evidence that seemed to incriminate him. He even said that he was eagerly awaiting the day that Taylor would be convicted and spend the rest of his life behind bars. Taylor's mother, devastated by the situation, defended her son tooth and nail. She claimed that the police were basing their accusations solely on the words of an informant desperate to reduce his own sentence, with no real evidence to support these allegations. In addition, there was a public outcry, especially among local communities, denouncing what many believed to be racist treatment by the police. Taylor was eventually arrested, but for a crime that had nothing to do with Brittany's disappearance. The controversy continued to grow when the informant who had initially accused Taylor filed a lawsuit to protect himself from death threats from members of a local gang known as the Blacks. They were furious that the informant had implicated Taylor, one of their associates, in an investigation that could have led to his conviction. Meanwhile, in August 2011, a new name emerged in the investigation: Raymond Moody. Raymond Moody has always been a name associated with crime and violence, but his involvement in the case of the disappearance of Brittany Drexel brought a new dimension to his notoriety. Moody, with a complex and disturbing criminal past, was on probation when Brittany disappeared in 2009. His presence in the vicinity of the hotel where Brittany was last seen raised many eyebrows. Moody was known for his extensive criminal history, which included a 40-year conviction in 1983 for sodomy of a child under the age of 14. After serving a significant portion of his sentence, he was released in 2004, but his life outside of prison continued to be marked by legal troubles. In 2008, he was charged with indecent exposure, a charge that was later reduced to public disorderly conduct. In 2010, he faced a new charge of failing to register as a sex offender, which added another layer of suspicion to his already tarnished image. Police began investigating Raymond Moody as soon as he was listed as a suspect in Brittany's disappearance. The investigation deepened due to his criminal history and his suspicious presence near the hotel. However, despite searches and intense scrutiny, they were unable to find concrete evidence to directly link him to the disappearance. Then, in a surprising turn of events, Moody turned himself into police on May 4, 2022, on charges of obstruction of justice. During questioning, he made a bombshell confession, revealing disturbing details about what happened to Brittany. Moody claimed he had killed Brittany 13 years earlier and provided information about where he had buried her body. Police followed Moody's lead and on May 11, 2022, they found Brittany's remains in a secluded area in the woods of Disobeyed, South Carolina. The burial site was hidden down a private driveway, surrounded by dense vegetation that made it difficult to locate. The remains were found about 5 feet underground and were accurately identified through dental records and DNA testing, confirming Brittany's identity. The discovery of the remains brought a mixture of relief and sadness to Dawn Drexel, Brittany's mother. In an emotional press conference, Dawn spoke of the pain she had felt throughout the 13 years of mourning. She expressed profound relief at finally having an answer, but also immense sadness at the loss of her daughter. Dawn described the moment as a step toward peace and closure, despite the lingering pain of losing Brittany. She spoke about how the case now represented a quest for justice and how the discovery marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. The news also brought relief to the family of Timothy Taylor, who had been wrongly implicated in the case. For years, Taylor and his family had suffered from mistrust, unfounded speculation, and intense media attention. The FBI, after a thorough review, confirmed that Taylor had no connection to Brittany's case, allowing him and his family to begin to rebuild their reputations and live without the burden of false accusations. Raymond Moody is not only known for his past crimes, but also for his possible connection to other missing person cases. In 2012, he was named as a possible suspect in the disappearance of Crystal Susan, a woman who went missing in South Carolina in 2005. Crystal, who was 28 at the time of her disappearance, has yet to be found, and Moody has never confessed to the case. Raymond Moody currently faces serious charges, including murder, kidnapping, and first-degree criminal sexual conduct. During his interrogation, he confessed to strangling Brittany the day she disappeared and burying her body the next day. Moody's confession brought grim closure to the case, but it also opened up new questions about other possible crimes and the impact his criminal life had on the lives of others. For Dawn Drexel and everyone involved in the search for Brittany, the story is a painful reminder of the profound and lasting impact cases like this have on the lives of those affected. The search for justice for Brittany Drexel not only marked the end of a long and painful wait, but also highlighted the importance of persevering in the search for the truth, no matter the hardships. The sadness of Brittany's loss remains, but the determination of her family and those involved to bring justice in her memory continues to be a source of strength and resilience. And now we have reached the end of another deep dive into a case that has affected many people. The case of Brittany Drexel is a painful reminder of how long the search for the truth can be, but also of how important it is to never give up. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more impactful stories like this, don't forget to give it a like. It makes all the difference to our channel and helps us bring you more relevant content. If you are not subscribed yet, take the opportunity to subscribe and activate the bell to stay up to date with all of our new videos. We want to know what you think about this case or if there is any other topic you would like to see here. Leave your comment below and let's talk about it. Thank you for following along and being part of our community. Until the next video, and remember, curiosity is the first step to truth.